Another build video from a poor man building a poor man's speaker box. So let's go over where we're at with some of the progress here. Previously, I glued some of these bracing to the bottom port panel, and then just now I've glued the port panel with bracing onto the enclosure. Some little tricks and things I had to do to make everything line up. This ratchet strap here was what was required to get this portion to pull over and down so that there was pressure against the side panel relative to the bottom port panel, and it also applies a little bit of pressure to this support. It also pulls in a downward angle to pull this section down to the bottom panel. It ended up not quite being enough, and as you can see, there's another clamp that's putting a little bit of pressure, as well as I've got a whole bunch of weights to assist in the downward pressure. Since I don't really have easy access to the bottom to put screws, and there's not really a way to clamp, this is kind of the janky way that I'm getting it done. Before I glued this, I mocked it up, and I was able to identify what it was going to take to get the amount of clamping force needed, and I was able to come up with some sort of redneck engineering methodology here. Yeah, it's fine. An issue that I'm dealing with this plywood. So this plywood I actually got for free from my work. They had a bunch of crates shipped over from across the ocean, and this was the crating that everything was shipped in. And when they were done, they were just going to throw all the wood away. So I said, hey, can I have it? Because it's very high ply count. It's good wood. Although blemished and used, as you can see, there's pre-existing damage, that I'm working with. But it was free plywood to me. So part of this budget build that I'm endeavoring is a direct result. A lot of the wood I'm using is repurposed wood that I got for free. So there's a convenience there. There's also a drawback to it. Like, there's screw holes and blemishes all throughout that I'm having to overcome. In the end, it's just a little bit of wood filler and a little extra sanding, and maybe the finish isn't quite premium, but for what we're doing, I think it should be fine. Some of the results is that this wood has a tendency to be quite bowed and not ideal. You can see that there's a bow in this panel, and in order to get this glue joint square and true, both of them for that matter, I had to do some things to ensure that the paneling was straight. So I just took some pre-cut pieces of plywood, and these will bow. I don't know if the camera will show, but they're bowing. They need to be wider or girthier in some form or another in order to maintain the rigidity. Now, I could have used other wood, but these were convenient and easy to apply. The way that I actually got this board to be as true as I needed it was that I put little shims in here and then clamped everything together. And then it was just a matter of a little bit of tinkering and shim adjustment in order to get this glue joint nice and tight, so that the paneling was sufficiently straight to make the glue joint tight, top and bottom. I only applied one screw. Let's see, where's my camera angle? One screw here and one screw here, just to kind of ensure that those don't move around during the gluing and attaching process. Let's see, what else have I got going on here of significance? Oh, I went ahead and I took a piece of plywood. So this panel wanted to stand pretty square, but this one had a tendency to be bowed in the wrong direction. Plus, I needed some clamping force to glue this. So I took a piece of plywood that I had that already had a 45-degree angle, so I'm not worried about glue leaking out and gluing this panel on. And once I had everything in place, I just pushed this up tight, making this much more square, and then I just applied one screw to hold it in place, which also gives me a little bit of clamping force, pushing this panel tightly up against the side of the enclosure. It's fairly easy to do. It should be easy to remove. let's see, what else have we got going on here? Just a typical clamping. I've got one side clamp pinching the bottom port panel up against the side wall. It didn't require a ton of force. And then I've got periodic clamps pinching the lower port panel to the front baffle. Should be sufficient. And then I've got one screw here just to kind of help secure and pull tight, because there's an internal brace from the baffle in here so far. Yeah, so that's another, I don't know, that's a large section that comes together. This driver is not my price point. This is a client's driver that I'm going to be building an enclosure for him. This resonant frequency of this driver is a little above that of my liking. It's like 41 hertz, but it's an absolutely beast and beautiful driver. I'm using it as a paperweight at the moment, but I've got a Dayton Audio, one of their more entry level 15s, and then I've just got some other weights here to help, and then a tiny little Sherwin Vega, all just for the sake of adding some weight, some downforce to help make sure that there's pressure for the glue joints. Yeah, the enclosure's coming along slowly. As I go along, I'm going to have to continue to do things to straighten this up as we go higher and higher. Once I get all the paneling that goes up, this should be relatively straight, and the back should be close enough that it shouldn't be that much work to do. So yeah, what else have we got going on here? I've got some of this other paneling that I'm gluing. This I glued yesterday. I still have to glue that one on. This was glued the other day. These are the internal port braces that will go on top here. So once all this dries, those will go on next. The three of them will get glued on, and then I'll be able to put the top port panel, which is this guy right here. Trying to think if there's anything else useful for conversation here. I think that's it for this build video. Did I run into any ridiculous hurdles? It was a little bit of a challenge once trying to get everything glued square so that when everything goes in, it is square. It is tedious and difficult. There was a part of me that was considering gluing this to this panel here and then gluing all of this on. I just decided that I would glue all of this together and then just put it in place. The hard part about that is there's a lot of glued surface, and if you wait too long, the glue starts to cure, and then when you put the pieces together, you don't get good adhesion. So I had to glue that bottom section, that bottom section. I had to glue this little T shape like this. This guy here, I had to put a glue joint. I had to put glue there. I had to put glue on this. So I turned this panel up, and then I applied glue to this panel and then this panel, and then I did apply a little bit of glue to this actual sheet so that when it came down, I had guaranteed glue. I mean, there's tons of glue bleed out. I don't think it's attractive, but I think it gives me confidence that there was a lot of glue there when I put the paneling on. That, I think, is the hardest part about a large glue process like this. Lots of surfaces, and you kind of have to operate quickly. It helps me if I mock everything up. Like I said, I mocked all of this up, minus the weights, and was confident that everything lined up. I had, everything was square before I made an effort to glue. I also had all of my clamps prepared. I had already everything roughly adjusted to the clamping size and shape that I needed, and then I had just had my clamps laying there. So once I glued it, set the panel in place, it was relatively systematic. I kind of had an idea. So especially with a large enclosure like this, it's good to sort of have a blueprint before you apply the glue. It's so easy to get carried away, get excited, and start gluing like mad, only to realize that you're one clamp short, or your clamp's not long enough, or your clamps are other end of the room and you're scrambling to grab them and the glue's setting, and it just decreases the quality of, you start cutting corners, you start making a mess, and if something's just a hair off, it's just a mess. So mocking it up beforehand, although tedious and time consuming and maybe even a little OCD, it adds a lot of value in preventing catastrophic situations. So until the next video, I'm not sure, but somewhere along the lines of the next port panel will be maybe where the next video falls in. Give me a day or two, guys. We'll keep working at it. I haven't made any other financial progress. I still want to try to reach out to Parts Express to see if I can get them to sponsor any aspect of this build. I'm not convinced that they will, that they'll be any kind of motivated. The vehicle's not impressive. I don't have any following. I do think that it would be cool to get Dayton Audio and Parts Express representation in the car audio scene, at least here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. It would be cool. I do think that if I can get this build built the way I want, that it'll be impressive. It'll be entertaining. So yeah, it's a hope and a dream. You know, before I close this video out, for any of you that ever watch this, people wonder, why on earth is there a necessity for a driver this ridiculous? Anyone in the car audio scene can't see it any other way. There's no point to a driver like this in the car audio world when you could have something like this, granted that you can afford it. I've discussed this already in other videos, but I want to reiterate. I kind of modeled this up in this environment. So there's roughly 50 cubic feet of available space that I would consider for a build. Or the enclosure I'm building is somewhere around roughly 50 cubic feet of internal enclosure volume. This 12-inch driver has the manufacturer recommends 3 cubic feet of internal volume with a port tuned to 31 hertz. I could put 8 of these drivers in this vehicle, and I could build a series-tuned 6th order bandpass enclosure, and it would all fit within the specifications. I could build a port that would be sized properly, and I don't have the math or the numbers right off the top of my head, but the cone surface area, the VD, the absolute displacement, excursion and cone area combined of 8 of these 12s, because I think there's 31, almost 32 millimeters of excursion here, which is 4 millimeters more than the Dayton Audio Ultimax 18s. And with 8 of these square 12s, it is more surface area. I don't have the numbers. And with the amount of power that these things can handle, I would be substantially louder with 8 of these. The difference is that 2 of these is what it's going to cost for the 418s I plan to run. And in order to drive these, based on that configuration, you will probably need close to the 2,000 watts per driver. 2018, I'm going to need 24,000, watts. And if you want some headroom, I'm going to need 30,000 watts of electrical energy potential to excite these to their peak potential, to be as loud as this van could be under those conditions. It would be far louder than the 418s I'm going to run. But we're talking about a $30,000 or $40,000 build or more. And I'm scraping by just to dream about a $10,000 build. Why do these drivers exist, and why am I not a huge fan of them? It's for the guys who, like, anybody that says you can't get loud without spending money. Well, it's like you really can't. It's all about the more money you invest, the more electrical potential you have, the more cone area, the more sophisticated driver that can handle the abuse. I mean, this thing can handle, I'm sure this thing can handle insane amounts of abuse. The stiffness of this cone is just absolutely ridiculous. There feels like there's a 1/4 inch of thick material between everything in here, this pulp sandwiched. What even is it? It's a paper composite material, as I understand it. It's a pulp something or other. It's just absolutely thick. It's robust. I mean, the infrastructure here is through the roof. It'll handle a ton of abuse, a ton of pressure, and this guy's rebuildable. It's designed for you to destroy it and then fork out money to put new guts in it and continue on. I'm just not in that realm. Like, I was not born into money, and I'm not intelligent enough to generate wealth and have this level of expendable income. That's part of the point of this build. This is the biggest build I've ever done, and it's going to be on a very tight budget. 10 grand is still a lot of money in my eyes for sort of a, like, it's not an investment that's going to have any return. It might make me popular among a few of the bass audio guys, might create some enemies, but it's also why I'm a fan of the Dayton audio products. I think they're clean. I think they're very capable for what they are. And that's the difference. You have to you're dealing with Hoffman's iron law. To fit a ton of these drivers into a vehicle and be incredibly loud, they have to be super robust. They have to be able to handle tons of electrical energy. And then you can get super loud with them. They're offsetting Hoffman's iron law. They're inefficient, but you can make them louder than efficient drivers because you can stack a million of them together and put a ton of energy to them. I'm on the side of the thought process of I want a more efficient driver and a larger enclosure, and that's how I intend to get loud, or as loud as is realistic within the limitations that I have. So I don't know if that rings a bell, makes any sense, but yeah. Would I be a sellout if randomly I fell into, if my pockets just became incredibly deep? Yeah, I'd sell out. I was looking at Sundown's Z Series 18s, I don't know, what is it? They're level 7 or L7 Z. I don't know what it is, but it's one of their premium drivers. The 18's got a resonant frequency of like 23 hertz or something, and an X max of like, I think that it's peak to peak excursions like 54 millimeters or something. It's absolutely incredible. If money was no object, I'd be super motivated to drop 4 of those Sundown 18s in here. Tons of excursion, tons of power handling. It would be cool, but I think those are $1,400 or $1,500 a driver, which for the money compared to something like this, I think that it's what money well spent. Like, I think they're actually priced pretty well, relatively speaking, but that's the price of the 4 18s I'm going to put in this van, and I'm not convinced that one of those 18s would be louder than the 4 18s I'm going to run. And so, I'm going to take up all the available space, and I think we'll be as loud or louder than one of those Sundown 18s. That's just the way that it is. But yeah, if money was no object, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that I would be using, or if I was just financially inclined, Dayton Audio's got a 21-inch driver that's like called the Kraken, and I could maybe finagle 2 or 4 of those in this vehicle. There's things that could be done if money was no object, but for many of us, and that's kind of why I'm excited, like, I'm gonna do this on the budget. Like, this is the underdog story for the budget guy who can't afford much. Here we go. So I don't know, appreciate you guys, anyone that pays attention. I hope I'm adding value. I'm hoping I'm not wasting your time. I hope I can fund this, build this enclosure, and not be able to fund it. It's gonna be super awesome.